Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us, especially with how busy your schedules are. We are so honored for the opportunity to have each and every one of you as a participant and a partner as we strive towards the goals of ensuring whole community inclusion, and not just the buzzword. It means the meaning of including people with disabilities and access and functional needs before, during, and after emergencies and disasters. Today, I come to you and I represent in two different hats. One as the International Association for Emergency Management, Access and Whole Community Inclusion Caucus Chair. The other is, as I come to you as the Colorado Office of Emergency Management, Access and Functional Needs Coordinator. I recognize with all of you that we are all, and I've learned from a lot of you, we are all a bunch of good people trying to do good things, which is why it's so important for us to continue working together, building connections with one another. And it is through these connections that we continue to build our understanding of communities we live in and how best we can serve them. We're doing this at a national opportunity with Vance, your partnership, Anne-Marie, your partnership, both Vance, you at Cal OES, California Office of Emergency Services, and Anne-Marie at New York University, as we bring all of this together. And then, with that, as we move forward today, please be sure to walk away thinking about what you learned from yesterday and today, and capture some how-tos tied to the must-tos of whole community inclusion in inclusive emergency management. With that, any of those items, please try to make your plan, work your plan, and protect your plan by identifying and considering capturing what you might want to start doing today. So maybe stuff you want to stop doing. What are some of the things you want to continue and change and write them down. This is how you start holding yourself accountable. Also walk away with at least 3 things you learned from the last 2 days, and then 2 actions you're going to apply what you learned, and 1 way you want to share those. This way, you're able to walk away from the symposium with your own plan that you could work and you could protect by continuously improving your whole community inclusion and emergency management work. This is also how you're going to be able to measure impact in the communities you serve, in the states you serve. And so once again, thank you all for being here and coming and supporting your communities by seeking to understand, getting some of these best and promising practices for whole community inclusion, and working together with our local, county, and state partners to ensure the safety of our community members with lived experience everywhere. Now, without further ado, we're going to get started with our keynote today. And so for today, we're going to go ahead and introduce the amazing Director of Office of Disability Integration and Coordination, Director Sherman Gilliams. He is the director and he's a native of Buffalo, New York, and serves as FEMA's Disability Coordinator and Director of Office of Disability Integration and Coordination, or as others might know it as ODIC. It's located in the agency's. The agency is located in Washington, D.C. headquarters. His role advises FEMA Administrator Criswell on meeting the agency's commitment to equity and emergency management for people with disabilities, including older adults and others with access and functional needs. So with that, off to you, Director Sherman.
Thank you, Sadie, and hello, everyone. It's so good to see all of you here. What you saw was a demonstration in adaptability. Our society needs to do that more so that we account for everyone in the audience getting all the information that can make a difference in somebody else's life. So thank you, Sadie, for that kind introduction. Thank you all for being here. I am wearing a black sport coat. I have a white collared shirt. I'm in a room with light walls, a mirror behind me with flowers that my wife picked. And I've got 4 daughters who tell me that my skin tone is between alluring amber and cinnamon brown. So you'll have to kind of visualize what that looks like. And I've got some dark rimmed glasses on. I was 2 years old when the last so-called ugly law was finally rescinded in the United States. These were laws that identified people who were poor and disabled, and therefore, and I quote, disturbed the flow of public life by their very being. Society would use this reasoning that seemed like a good idea at the time, apparently, to justify forbidding people like me in my wheelchair and some of you from appearing in public spaces for over a century. These laws were enacted in places like Colorado, Nebraska, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and even in the Philippines. Chicago was the last city in the US to repeal its ugly law in 1974, which was only 48 years ago and 16 years before the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, why do I bring up that chapter in our history? I bring it up for two reasons. One, it illustrates how far we're capable of evolving as a society in less than a generation. And we should celebrate that, particularly within a context of emergency management with leaders like Vance Taylor at the helm, who was kind enough to invite me here to speak to you. At the same time, we're reminded to stay vigilant for history's familiar echo, especially in times of crisis, where I've witnessed firsthand a sort of survival of the fittest mindset sitting on one end for some people, and a struggle for existence to be seen and heard sitting on the other side for others. Hurricanes Katrina and Sandy and other disasters would remind us that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it will rhyme if we don't heed the lessons. And it's one of the reasons many of us do this work. And while we know we don't get do-overs after a disaster, we embrace the opportunity to do better the next time. And there will surely be a next time, as we see in places like Guam, California, Vermont, and others as we speak. Now, for the Office of Disability Integration and Coordination, FEMA, the component to which I am accountable, doing better required me to rethink the definition of success in the so-called disability integration mission. And so I posed the following question to a group of stakeholders during a call recently. I heard Dr. Sutton touch on it yesterday. The question was, how do we define success when loss of life and property are part of the inescapable reality in every crisis situation we face? Now, I wasn't surprised by the fact that my question was met with silence, as I imagined that no response felt right in that moment. But it made me think back to when I spoke to survivors in places like Ponce, Puerto Rico, Lee County, Florida, East Palestine, Ohio, Selma, Alabama, and Jackson, Mississippi, and heard their stories firsthand. And I had a chance to ask them questions, some of which were raised by Dr. Sutton yesterday, about what informed your decision to stay or evacuate. And this is why I was fascinated by the discussion on the psychological implications of emergency messaging. Now, what made success hard to define is the reality that response and recovery lay at the mercy of forces of nature and the independent will of people who have a say in what happens even before the response has started. And sometimes it's at their peril. An example would be a woman who was blind. I spoke to her, one of the evacuees from Sanibel Island. I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but it's a island that's got one bridge, two-lane bridge on and off. And I asked her, what made you evacuate? She said, well, it wasn't necessarily the messaging, because the messaging was a little muddled. It was the fact that my daughter drove about 200 miles to come pick me up. And because she had come all that distance and she had heeded the alert, I left with her. And she said, but not everybody who got the message left. And I said, why do you suppose that is? And she said, well, because in their minds, the safest place they could be in the eye of uncertainty that they face was in their homes. And some of them, again, at their peril, as houses would wash away. I went on the island myself, and it was hard to see an American city in that condition, but that was the reality. And this lesson was a realization that success can't be predicated on how we react to the cards that get dealt when a disaster occurs. The only real opportunity for success lies in the preparation. And I don't mean the go bags. I don't mean stockpiling food and water or planning a route to an emergency shelter. Those are certainly important, but The real success starts long before a tropical wave off the coast of Africa toyed with the notion of becoming a hurricane that would hit the Caribbean or the Gulf states. It starts with the collective mentality of a community to ensure that every single one of its members has access to all it has to offer and can function no matter what their needs are. Now, some people call that universal design, but I think we need to start calling it resilient design, because a community that is invested in ensuring every person can access every mode of transportation, get through every doorway, go to any level in a building, take information from any source, and communicate freely with anyone, independently or with minimal assistance, is the best, most resilient, most prepared community by structural and cultural design. Now, this realization led me to identify the 14 points of inequity that we watch for in every disaster and try to preempt before the disaster sets in. I heard Mr. Jeff Tom talk about a few of them yesterday during the first panel, and Vance elaborated on other non-obvious considerations, which happens to speak to the importance of not just having stakeholders with lived experience at the table. They also need to be in positions of authority and responsibility where their problem-solving acumen can be scaled to help so many others. It's lived experience that I sought to embed into the 14 common inequities that grounded my vision for FEMA's disability integration mission this year. That's 14 opportunities to do better with every response. And this is in addition to key measures of effectiveness, such as how we assess risk, how we adapt to uncertainty and avert harm, some of which is determined by those whose lives depend on our work, and some of those may be you. So yes, you all help us ascertain whether we've been successful. I heard Mr. David Meyer talk about the importance of ground-up inclusive planning, which is the only way we'll know whether we're basing success on what truly matters. Now, I'm going to shorten up my comments today so we can get on track, but I'd like to close today and with a thought on preparedness, because again, that's really success. And this comes from one of the greatest presidents in our nation's history, Abraham Lincoln, who said these words: "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Now, those words couldn't be more prophetic as we peer into the future of emergency management, where preparedness is the first response to crisis. And nothing makes me more proud to see all of you here at this symposium sharpening the axe as we get ready for what lies ahead. And I just want to say, speaking of readiness, please log on to ready.gov/summer-ready. Again, ready.gov/summer-ready to learn more and add your voice to our efforts to ensure our older loved ones and people with access and functional needs make it through these dog days of summer, where extreme heat is expected to be a lot hotter this year. I want to sincerely thank you all for your attendance as I look forward to day 2 of this wonderful and important event. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for the invitation.
Director Gilliams, thank you so much for those wonderful opening remarks, and thank you for helping us as we keep helping everybody as we will look at these best and promising practices. Thank you for being part of it.